Learning vocabulary in a foreign language is one of the most important things about learning that language. Obviously, if you don't know any words, you won't be able to speak that language. Goes without saying. Learning vocabulary is also one of the most difficult things for some people to learn. So today I'm going to give you a few tips on how you can get those words to stick in your brain. There are tons of sites out there that use flashcard styles to try and get you to learn vocabulary either in your native language or in your foreign language. Obviously, with that many people out there using flashcard sites, some people can learn that way. I'll put some links down in the description for some websites that you can use to use flashcards. There's a bunch of them out there, but I've got a few suggestions. That being said, there are a lot of people who will find that using flashcard websites or even just physical flashcards will be completely useless for them. The only tip that I have about using flashcards is I would much prefer that you write them out by hand and actually use your own little, 4x6 or whatever flashcards. You don't even have to buy 4x6 flashcards. You can just take a piece of paper and write on one side the one language, write on the other side the other language, and then fold it in half. Problem solved. Using digital flashcards, however, does not have the same effect as it does on your brain. Whenever you write things down, the physical act of writing that down connects both the kinetic one whenever you're writing it down to your brain, and also whenever you are reading it as you are writing it, it sticks in your brain a little bit more. If you're just looking at a flashcard and then flipping it over and flipping it over, it doesn't really stick in your brain all that well. So, tip number 1, write out your own flashcards. That actually brings me to one of my favorite tips on how to learn vocabulary. It's actually the way that I learn vocabulary, and is the suggestion that I have for anyone else who is really struggling to learn foreign language vocabulary. Write out the words that you want to know on a piece of paper. Write them down one word at a time. Write it German, English, German, English. Be sure to include also the der word if there is one, if it's a noun, and also the plural. Every time that you write these down, say it out loud. So you would say, der Schmetterling, the butterfly, die Schmetterlinge, the butterflies. Every single time you write this down. So as you are writing it, say it out loud. Say it as fast as you can so you can continue to get that repetition. So it's not just for every one time that you write it out, you say it out loud one time. Say it out loud as many times as you can before you finish writing it out. Always write it German, English, German, English. Always start with the German, finish with the English. Do this 5 times for each word. So you go down, der Schmetterling, the butterfly, 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 and then move on to your next word. And you can have der Vogel, the bird, der Vogel, the bird, and so on. Also, don't forget that I told you to include the plural, but for simplicity's sake, let's leave that out. Some people have a little bit more trouble learning vocabulary and can't do it off of just 5 times, so I suggest starting with 5, and if it doesn't work for you, just continue on up to 10 or so. The reason I say to start with 5 is because some people will find this method extremely tedious, because it kinda is, and then that will make it so that it's boring, and boring things don't really stick in your brain all that well. My suggestion would be to limit this to about 30 words or so at any given time. Using this particular method accomplishes a bunch of different things. Writing them out actually forces you to read them over and over and over again with both the definition and the German word, and then that makes it so that you have to read it. It does the exact same thing that Flashcards does, except it actually activates your brain while you're writing it. Saying it out loud gives your brain yet another way to remember it. It also makes it so that you can practice your pronunciation, and it also keeps you on task because you're not talking to other people or using your brain for other activities. That actually brings me to another thing. Don't listen to music while you're trying to learn a foreign language. No matter how many people will tell you, I just learn better whenever I'm listening to music. It's been scientifically proven you don't. I don't care that you think you do. You don't care that it relaxes you and whatever. You should do that by the setting that you're in, making sure that you sit in the same spot and you're always trying to make sure that everything is quiet and setting up your surroundings so that you can relax while you're learning the foreign language. That has nothing to do with your music. The reason that I say don't listen to music, it's actually about listening to music with lyrics. Now, the lyrics obviously are going to say things, and whenever they're saying things, they're probably going to be in your native language. And if you're in the native language, while you were listening to music, your brain is thinking English, you're writing down German, it's not going to work. Stop it! Speaking of music, that actually brings me to another thing. Sing the vocabulary. Not even kidding, this is actually a thing. While you're writing them down, instead of just saying them out loud, entertain yourself by singing them. Der Schmetterling, der Schmetterling, der Schmetterling is the butterfly. Der Schmetterling, der Schmetterling, der Schmetterling is the butterfly. See? Gets in your brain. Doesn't even matter what tune you pick. Pick something catchy, pick something that fits with the syllables you need, or you can just make it up as you go, which is what I usually do. I know some of you are probably thinking that I'm kidding about this, but it actually works really, really well. And by the time that you get done with learning things this way, you'll have trouble saying that word without singing it every time. Speaking of goofy ways to remember things, Goofy actually works for some people. I'm actually one of those people. Goofy really helped me out whenever I was in high school. I don't think this really makes any sense until I give you an example, so let's just start with that. I am Schmetterling the butter, so it will fly better. Schmetterling, butterfly. Basically, you take a sentence and you make it so that it surrounds itself with that word. Make up something that sounds goofy and works with the word. Try and incorporate the gender of the noun as well while you're doing this, and get it so that it's just something dumb and silly. The goofier the better, because the goofy stuff will stick in your brain a lot better than other things will. For example, you know that it's der Tisch, the table, and you know that it's die Gabel, the fork. So your table is sitting there hitting on your fork and says, "Hey, what's a nice fork like you doing in here?" And you can get that to stick in your brain because your table is masculine, your fork is feminine, and it just seems to make sense that those two would eventually fall in love. The silliness also works out really well for learning the genders of nouns in other ways. Because the genders of nouns are so completely arbitrary sometimes, this might actually come in handy if you can just kind of put some kind of logic behind it, even if it's not actually good logic. Your brain will appreciate that. My personal way of doing this is to make up again a sentence that goes with the gender of the noun. For example, dude, that is the manliest Tisch I have ever seen. I've seen a lot of Tische in my time, but that's the manliest of them all. Obviously, I'm not the only one who does this because there's a video from Smarter German over here that you can find, and also a link in the description to a video from Henning Venn, and they both have similar systems. The Smarter German channel has the idea of Superman, and Superman goes with all of the masculine things, so you have like Superman lifting up the table, something like that. And then you also have the version from Henning Venn where he says that everything includes David Hasselhoff if it's masculine, Angela Merkel if it's feminine, and E.T. if it's neuter. Anyway, you can check out both of those videos, the Smarter German one over here, and the other one, link in the description, of course. Obviously, these tips and tricks are not the only way that you can remember vocabulary. These are just the things that I've used in my own German learning whenever I was in high school and whenever I was in college. If you have other ideas that might be helpful to some of the other German learners out there, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below and discuss what it is that your favorite way to learn vocabulary is and how you're doing this. If you use a particular website to learn your vocabulary, go ahead and leave a link in the comments down below so that others can find your website as well. That's all I've got for today. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss.